Call the regular committee of the whole order at 6 p.m. Start of the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. To the republic to stand one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Clerk, please do the roll call.
Alderman Carr.
Here.
Alderman Roll. Alderman Johnson. Alderman Montoya. Alderman Reva. Alderman Fairwell.
Here.
Alderman McGee.
Here.
For three and you, correct.
Reminder, the public comment period is not time for dialogue. Purpose of the public comment period is the mayor and alderman, city officials, and it is in fact a one-way communication to city council, city's administration, and departments are available for discussion. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Being none, we have to do business, honorary street signs. And we have a presentation from our police department, and we have a short executive session. So honorary street signs, this has been asked of me every year I've been here, since I've been an alderman. Guildhouse, been asking to rename the alley next to their house in between the two properties they own, honorary Jack King Way. Then I believe there's 3 people that were killed, the same family in Vietnam or Korea on Grove Street, the families at the Alvarado told me they've been asking to do some honorary street sign. I've been hesitant to do any of this because we need to have something that's rigid and some application process balances. So I took this from 3 of our neighboring towns and tweaked it a little bit. I talked to our public works superintendent. And so this is just a draft. I wanted to input the council, forward this or not. The price tag is at bare minimum on what it would cost to order a custom sign and then install it. Both. But I wanted to get your input on this. Over.
Obviously, the people you just mentioned are very worthy of recognition. I'm concerned about it for a couple of reasons. Maybe you might share some. I've seen other cities where they still do this and it can get a bit out of control and feel a bit confusing. Also, I guess I am concerned about how do you make this decision objectively and so that it is fair. So I don't know. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not like jumping all over you.
That's right. It's something, if you read the
Yeah.
I put in here, I took the most stringent things and probably added a few years. So, and again, we can add to this. It's not something I need to get past right away. It's just something that's been.
And I don't know whether there's maybe some other, for worthy folks like this, or maybe I think there's some other way to recognize them. Yeah, that's good too. So I'll think about it myself a little bit.
Yeah. I'll just go over it so it's on the record. So we put on here ideas like must be at least a 25-year service, lifetime, made significant and long-term contributions through cultural, humanitarian, historical, military achievement. Shall be a clear geographical relationship to the street and the nominee. Location of honorary street name shall be restricted to non-arterial streets. The proposed honorary street name shall not forget any existing name or be similar either phonetically or linked to any other honorary street name. Honorary street name signs will be distinctive in color and size, different than the city signs I have now, and then I got that deed in there. And the only one sign. So let's say this family on Hill Street lived at 2200 Grove, just guessing, could only be on that one corner near the house. But by all means, I'll leave this out there, not put this on the next agenda. I'll get more feedback. Please think about it. Guildhouse did ask for something. I think I could do something temporary for them for their 5K run. But you're right, it needs to be something that's very stringent and not just like Chicago had a big deal with this a few years ago, and they've now made it very stringent. That's where I got some of this language from. And they actually limit it to no more than 2 a year per ward now. We can add stuff like that in here too, but I have also checks and balances by it has to be approved by Public Works, City Administration, and then if it passes both those, then it comes to City Council. So there's 3 checks points already I put in there. But think about it, nothing needs to be done right away.
I would also like to maybe the police department's input, since there's some concern to me about someone calls in, hey, there's something going on in front of Auto Drive, where's that?
Yeah. No, we get
Yeah.
for the police department. Any other questions regarding this?
People do call City Hall. Yeah.
I just mentioned two that asked me personally recently.
Yeah, often they do call
Yeah.
City Hall.
And I told the guild house we'll do something temporary, but it's an alley, it's not a street.
That's fine.
All right, and I know when I was an alternate, someone asked for Art Kurtz to get the Public Works named after him. There was a big debate on that, and they said they were gonna formulate something, and nothing ever happened. He was superintendent for 20 or 30 years.
I think when I was out there, it should be from Mark Durango, the garage, they had a little app, they went to Mark Durango. And they never did it.
And we have our former superintendent that passed away. I want to do something for him. So I wanted to formulate something before we start just putting something.
Okay.
All right, and then I have the police department will do a presentation on the state of the police department and we'll have a short executive. Chief, all yours. We have a fire station 2, I think after a former chief, like 40s, bells or something. Red Center. And 2 street names, only Kruger and Rexford, I think are the only 2 names from our pioneers. That's a park, so that's perfect. Go ahead, Chief.
Good evening. Before I start this, you've all been provided a handout, PowerPoint handout that I thought would probably be easier for you instead of trying to rubberneck and look at the TV. But before I talk about where we're at, I think it's important to also mention, where we were. It's hard to appreciate where you're at when you don't know where you came from. So prior to 2015, our patrol division was on a 6-3 rotating schedule. And it's hard to explain what that means without asking you to envision a 9-day work week. The first 3 days of that 9-day work week, the sergeant would be off and the corporal would be in charge. And then the second 3 days, the corporal would be off and the sergeant would be in charge. And then the remaining 3 days, the sergeant and the corporal worked together. So essentially you had 2 supervisors working the same time, paying their rates. In 2015, we went to a 12-hour schedule, but the platform did not change. On every shift, you had 1 sergeant and 1 corporal working together. And in some cases, that corporal was assigned a zone. So you're overpaying for patrolmen to work a zone, if you understand, get it. So in 2021 rather, we made a conscious decision to stop promoting corporals. We did it a little bit on the back end by paying the sergeant overtime. But you'll see in a bit how it worked. Now, in 2018, there was a chief and 1 union administrative sergeant that made up the command staff. And then when this administration came in, we had a chief, a deputy chief, and 2 commanders. That was important because the union sergeants were tasked with administrative responsibilities. And that kind of gave to some loyalty issues, I guess you could say. But now we're here. So in June of 22, we implemented a drone program. September of 22, we subscribed and contracted with the Flock camera systems. October of 22, we implemented the officer in charge. February, we opened up our very own training center. May of 23, body cams came along. In June of 23, we implemented a community service officer position. In August of 23, we were fortunate enough to start a K-9 program. And then October of 23, we changed vendors and went with a company called Quicket. Our drone program started after the $6,500 drone was donated to the city from an outside entity. We currently have 4 licensed pilots. And we use them primarily for events and specific calls. One call in particular was a young child that went missing behind an apartment complex and was lost in the woods. The drone is a Mavic 2 Enterprise, and it has the capability of taking photos, videos, and thermal imaging, which again came in handy with the missing child. Our flock cameras, we are contracted to have 10 cameras. Currently, only 8 are operational. However, we got word earlier this week that next week, one of the 2 missing will be installed. They have assisted our investigative units with some crimes, specifically a homicide that occurred up on 119th Street. And the way it's designed is when a known wanted vehicle passes through the camera, it sends an alert to the watch commander. And the watch commander then assigns the zone cars to that general area. Now, it's not to pursue the vehicle, right? The goal is to deter who's ever in that car from getting too comfortable, stopping, looking around, committing another crime. So it's more to shag them than it is enforcement. So that's what we're doing. Officer in charge. So again, they were on a 6 and 3 schedule and they moved to a 12, and 2 supervisors were working at the same time. That was just costing us too much money. So during negotiations, we were able to agree upon an officer in charge program. When the sergeant is off and the OIC is working, they get paid the rate of a sergeant. Their training consists of a class through Northwestern University. And to date, it has saved the city almost $115,000. I know that's hard to read itself, so the next page is bigger, easier to read. So that's the breakdown of the savings through the implementation of the OIC program. January 23, the civil service changed their rules and allowed DACA recipients to apply to be police officers. Currently, we have 1 full-time officer who is just excelling beyond belief. We have 1 officer in the part-time academy. There are 2, well, 1 now. We have 1 candidate currently on the eligibility list to be hired. And then we have 1 community service officer. We have applications and people have come in from New Jersey, Virginia, Florida, and Texas to take our exams. As it happens, they weren't too successful, but I did hear from one of them last week, and she plans to test again. In February 22, with permission from the mayor, we utilized an empty space right next door here that was full of old chairs, old tables, old desks. It was a dumping ground. I didn't put it in your handout, but this is a picture of what it looked like before, if you could see it. It was dark, it was depressing, full of clutter, and you all know what it looks like now. So the David Schultz Training Center opened in February 23. It has many purposes. It helps with our in-service training of our own officers. A few classes that they've certified our officers in are TASER, CPR, and Quicket, the program we use next door. There are 3 primary training sources throughout the state. One is called NEMERT, right? NEMR is the Northeast Multi-Regional Training. Almost every department belongs to that. We have the Illinois Training and Standards Board and Northwestern University. Now, it's through Northwestern University School of Police Personnel that our OICs are put through. That's $1,100 per student. Staff and command, that's $4,500 to $5,100 per student, based on location. The good thing about hosting these classes is that we get 2 free spots for every class we host. So if we were to host a staff and command, we would get $9,000 in savings. You know, considering the amount of money we put into this training center, we're going to recoup that money if we haven't already. To date, there have been over 580 students come through various classes. And that's 580 people looking for a lunch at some point. So it exposes these people to the city and the good things that are happening in it. As it happens, I was in a meeting earlier today and I was talking to the gentleman sitting next to me who said he just graduated from staff and command. And as it was, yeah, you know, so there, I've been through staff and command. It's the curriculum is quite challenging. I have a master's degree, and I would much rather go through another master's program than go through staff and command again. But we were talking about the staff study done that they do in that course, and you know, I asked him how many times it got kicked back to him from the instructor, and he said 3 times. And, well, mine got kicked back 4, so for him to get 3 times, it's pretty impressive. Additionally, you know, looking through job postings, you will see that staff and command is a prerequisite for a chief in many surrounding municipalities. So getting that free training and getting our people trained up on it is only a benefit to us. When we first implemented this training program, Sergeant Anthony Strezzo was designated as the training coordinator. Sergeant Strezzo is a certified instructor in many areas. They're listed, I don't want to go through them. His responsibility includes getting 59 employees through their annual training, which is listed. There's also a mandate for 3-year training, and those are listed. And then there's also a 5-year mandate. So 59 total employees that he has to get through, make sure they're up to date on their training. It's no small task, I assure you. However, due to staffing shortages, we had to pull them out of that designated position. I know when the city was soliciting insurance quotes, Mr. Logan and the insurance adjuster met over here in the training center, and the adjuster made it a point to speak with Sergeant Strezzo about everything he was certified in, and he made it a point to take diligent notes. I'm not sure how much that played into a factor of our ability to get insurance, but I would want to believe it had some significance. But like I said, due to staffing, we just don't have the personnel. So we had to pull them out and put them back on a shift. So he is now required to run a shift and supervise, you know, 4 or 5 people, and then still continue to do their training. Every now and again, you'll see an email. Every now and again, the field investigator for the Training and Standards Board will come out, do a review of our files, and he sent an email to both Commander Sepisi and Sergeant Strezzo. Doing a roster review in your agency is in top-notch shape at 90% compliance. I wish more agencies were like yours and followed your model. Coming from the state training, not too bad. we were going through appropriations for the 2023 fiscal. And, during one of those meetings, Mr. Wogan, brought up the topic of body cams. Looking into it, the cost, and seeing that it was an unfunded mandate through the state. The cost of $50,000, just a little daunting, considering we had many other areas that needed attention. And also to consider is the law based on our population. The law didn't require us to implement these body worn cameras until 2025. So we're two years away from the mandate, and we have other areas that need to be addressed. So it was decided at that time that we're just going to forego it and deal with what we need to deal with. After that, Commander Sepsi took it upon himself to do some research and found a grant opportunity for these body worn cameras. Commander Sepsi brought it to the administrators. Ultimately, we got the grant. It covered half the cost, but it's still $25,000 that we could put somewhere else. I was in favor of not going with the body cams, but I did not make the ultimate decision. In February of, no, sorry, April of 23, we got the body cams in. We went did a 1 month trial with a few of the officers, just to provide an opportunity for us to learn the program as well as them. And then finally in early May of 23, every officer had the camera, and we were rolling. June 1st of 23, there was an incident. An officer involved shooting. Every officer on the scene had body camera. And the state's attorney ultimately made a decision not to charge the officer criminally based on the recordings of the camera. I was not in favor of this, right? But somebody made a decision which saved this city a lot of money and a lot of grief and a lot of damage that needs to be recognized. Also in 2023, we implemented our community service officers. We started out with 2 initially because we didn't borrow anybody's model. We decided to go from the ground floor up. We're going to do what's best for Blue Island. So we started with 2, and then once we got comfortable with it, we brought on a few more. From June of 23 to December of 23, they wrote a total of 340 citations. In 2024, they wrote a total of 1,429 citations. Half of the current CSOs we have now are Blue Island residents. And the purpose of the CSO program was not to generate revenue, although that's what they do. The purpose was to provide an outlet for those not going to college, as our target ages are between 18 and 21. Just because you don't go to college doesn't mean you're a bad person, right? Some go to local colleges, they just don't go away. So it was our attempt to reach down to the younger generation and give them a path forward, possibly a career. We'll see how that turns out. I know 2 of our current CSOs are taking our full-time exam next month. So they're going to have the advantage of knowing our rules, regulations, policies, and procedures, as well as our programs and the geography. So they're really ahead of the game here. Our next screen is a total number of citations written in 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and the first 6 months of 2024. We are on pace as a department as a whole to go over 15,000 citations this year. And what does that mean? towards revenue. We're doing pretty well. You're more than welcome to see for yourself. We're doing pretty well there. We are far above, more than half of where we're at last year. I pulled the 4 years, and then the next slide is the comparison between 23 and 24. In August of 23, there was an opportunity to implement a canine program that was little cost to us. There was a change in the law in Minnesota that required a few of their canine officers to retire. So we were the recipient of one of those certified dogs that was no longer permitted to work in Minnesota. So Rocco was a North American work dog. He was certified in narcotics and human scent trafficking. During the last year, he was responsible for the recovery of 2.5 pounds of heroin, 40 pounds of cocaine, 262 pounds of marijuana, and over $230,000 in cash. As it happens, Canine Rocco is no longer with us. The handler could not pass up another opportunity to do something else for the betterment of his family. And so Rocco was ultimately sent back to Minnesota to be with his original handler. October of 23, we switched to Quicket. Now, Quicket is cloud-based as opposed to server-based, so that's going to save us money on maintenance and storage. It incorporates all of our parking tickets, our code tickets, our ordinance tickets, and our Cook County citations. It has the ability to merge information from a crash report into an incident report, which then decreases the amount of time the officer is down, regurgitating the same information, which then increases his unobligated time. And an officer with unobligated time at least has the potential to increase his proactive duties. Calls for service. These are, again, over the years from 2020 to 2023. You could see the call volume just keeps on going up. We went from 30,600 in 2020 to 37,000 just last year. This year, for the first 6 months, we're over 20,000. So we're on pace to exceed over 40,000. Our police department divides the city up into 6 zones. It's important to know the zones for you can understand the contents of the next slide. But essentially, Western is the dividing line, and then 127th, anything north of 127th is 1, and everything north of the canal is 2, and then anything south of the canal is 3. So going to the next slide, keeping those zones in mind, over the years, from 2020 to 2023, the majority of all police activity, whether it be parking tickets, traffic enforcement, ambulance assist, the totality of the calls of any type, the majority of the calls are in zone 2 east. 2 east is the 2 east is a zone that has the most police activity of any type. And that's been the case for the last 4 years. Zone 3 west, which would be the California Gardens, that area, traditionally, historically, for the last 4 years, has had the least amount of police activity. If you're looking for a specific number, I have them for you, but if not, I can just keep going. Great. We have 4 red light cameras, 2 at 127 in Kedzie, 1 going east, 1 going west, 1 at 127 in Western going east, and 1 at 127 in Gregory going north. over the last 4 years, the number of tickets that were actually issued has gone up. Currently, we are at about 49.5%. And the purpose of the red light cameras is not to generate revenue, it's to decrease the likelihood of a crash. It just so happens that it does create revenue, but that's not the purpose, and that's not what we're hoping to do. As you see in the next slide, the revenue from those red light tickets has gone up most significantly from 2020 to 2021. But we appear to be steady, and like I said, we're about 49.5% now, so I would assume, come the end of the year, we're gonna be close to where we're at in 2023. Our patrol fleet, in January 2022, I'm gonna be honest, it was really bad. We had 6 vehicles with over 100,000 miles and 4 vehicles over 60,000 miles. Typically, many municipalities retire the vehicles from 60. But it is what it is, and we do what we have to do. So in January 2022, we had 10 vehicles over 60,000 miles. Currently, however, we are in much better shape. The city made a commitment to the patrol fleet, and then with the addition of the CSOs and their contributions, we've been able to secure some really fine vehicles. And I can tell you, we really appreciate it, and so do the officers. And now lastly, this is our command structure today: chief, deputy chief, and commander. As you can see, we implemented a lot of things. It's taken a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. So that's where we're at. Now that's it for my slides. However, you do have one more piece of paper behind that last slide. And what I want to that, I want to say, I was asked by the mayor. I was asked by the mayor to take this position back in 2022, and at that time nationally, there was a lot going on as it relates to law enforcement. So one thing I didn't want to do was embarrass anybody. But
Yes, before I question, if you haven't embarrassed anybody, that's for sure. And I really appreciate your help, certainly, in terms of the help that you've given Fourth Ward and setting up our neighborhood watch program. It's been a fantastic thing.
those are fun.
Yeah, they are. No, they're fun and informative both. And it gets a lot of information out of the community. So I really appreciated that. Thank you very much for all of that. And got one little question about the presentation, if I could, and one more thing. On the calls for service, this one.
Yeah.
It's up, fair amount. Can you kind of describe why there's so many more calls for service than there were 4 years ago?
Yeah, I don't have to speculate, but I want to say it's because of the activity of CSOs. It's not separated from which officer is doing more work. It's just the total number of calls. And now we're at 6 now. We just onboarded 2 last week, so there's going to be 8. But I'm rather confident in the two CSOs we do have that are taking the full-time exam. So we'll be back down to 6. So I mean, you saw their numbers, they're out there working,
Yeah, no.
you know?
Great program, yeah.
So it is not indicative in any way of crime. But I need to stress that, that's the last thing that is indicative of.
Then kind of back to the subject of neighborhood watch, I guess, in a way, at our last meeting, you were asked about your plans for the future, and we know that, you know, when you joined us, at the beginning of this administration, you're going to stay through the administration, and you did let us know that you're planning to retire, which I wish you would stay forever, but I can understand why you might not. But anyway, just curious what is there any, it was kind of just a quick announcement. What's the kind of plan, or how's it working out, or whatever, just where are we going with that, I guess, is the question.
All right, okay, so in February 22, I was asked by the mayor to fill this position and to stay to the end of his term. And I made that commitment. And I have every intention on fulfilling it. But you know, this term expires May 13th. I'm not one to pay too much attention to politics, but I do know that there's an election coming, okay? Unless you know something I don't, I'm not aware of anybody announcing their candidacy to be mayor. So I don't know who the mayor is gonna be in May. Yeah, at the same time, you know, the election's in April. So whoever decides to run for mayor and he or she wins, they may not want me to stay. And that gives me, you know, 1 month to find a job. So I don't know how to answer your question, but I mean, I am preparing to retire. I mean, I'm preparing, right? If I fail to prepare, then I'm preparing to fail. So, I mean, I got a family at home and, but I'm making plans. Yes, I'm
Fair
making
enough.
plans.
No, I get it. I just was curious after your announcement.
Yeah,
That's there's some things to TBD, I guess.
right. That doesn't mean the door is shut. I mean, it's a lot easier to cancel plans that you made than it is to make plans that you don't have. So, I don't know if that answered your
As
question.
good as you're gonna get.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? We have a short executive, which that's what falls to chief. Peter, one executive. All the generals, all the Carl, in favor, say aye. Aye. Any motion to reopen the session, all in favor, say aye. We discussed, personnel issues and possible. Motion to adjourn. Carl, all in favor, say aye.
I think